And so welcome to our latest merchant webinar. Once again, we're going to be discussing sales tax and how it applies to stores online. There's a lot of information to understand about this. It's not an easy topic. Fortunately, we have someone who's very versed in the topic with us today. Lizzie from TaxJar is going to talk to us in a couple minutes and share some information, not only in general, but also some of the recent changes that are now starting to surface relating to the Wayfair South Dakota Supreme Court ruling that just took place less than 2 months ago, but it's brought a lot of new nuance to what you need to know about this. And you'll also learn a little bit more about TaxJar, which offers a lot of tools to help merchants like yourself with being able to keep track of all of this and stay organized around sales tax. But before we begin, we want to remind those of you who haven't joined us in a while or maybe new to our webinar series that you can ask a question by clicking on the questions section of the panel on your screen and submit the questions there. When we're completed with the presentation, we'll take your questions and review them here on the call, so that way we can address those issues right now. So definitely be able to submit your questions at any point, no matter how big or small, and let us know what you want to know. And we want to remind you that this is part of our merchant webinar series, which you can visit zoe.com/webinars to view both previous webinars and upcoming webinars. We presented at this point more than 20 of them, including TaxJar's original presentation with us last year. So you can watch those historical recordings there, as well as on YouTube, and see upcoming webinars. We've been scheduling 1 to 2 a month for quite some time, so we hope to keep that going for you as we move forward. So without further ado, let's pass it over to Lizzie, who's going to talk to us about all the things you need to understand about sales tax that we can fit into this presentation of this size. But there's a lot of really helpful information out there, and Lizzie's compiled a lot of it into this presentation for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Josh. Hi, everyone. I'm Lizzie Greenberg from TaxJar. I'm going to present my screen. Thanks so much for the Zoe team for having us on your webinar series. We're really excited to be able to talk to your customers and talk to your merchants about TaxJar. It's a fun topic for us. Maybe no one else on the webinar thinks sales tax is fun, but we have a good time with it. All right, let me adjust my screen. All right, so let's get started. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is understanding sales tax. So we're going to start with a lot of the basics and get you guys fully up to speed on what you need to know around sales tax to better understand what's going on with the Supreme Court ruling. It's been in the press. A lot of people have heard about it. I'm sure you've heard people mention Wayfair in passing. I'm going to tell you what happened with this ruling, how it affects you, but we're going to start from scratch and talk a little bit about the basics so you understand how this ruling changes things for people. So we're going to cover sales tax basics, weave in there the Supreme Court ruling, tell you what you need to know, how you need to act in accordance with this. And then lastly, I'm going to talk to you about how TaxJar can help you manage everything you need to know about sales tax moving forward in this kind of new world. And then I'll have some time at the end for questions. So feel free to use the chat box, as Josh mentioned. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So I've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to get started. So who I am, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at TaxJar. I have over 15 years of experience running e-commerce businesses. I've been filing sales tax returns in California and Texas and a couple other states for a lot of years. So I know exactly what it's like to be in your shoes, to be a merchant, to be overwhelmed by sales tax, and pretty much just frustrated by having to comply. I've talked to thousands of sellers, auditors, professionals, CPAs, etc. I'm not a CPA, just to make that clear, but I'm here to help you make an informed decision on what your business needs to know about sales tax and how you need to approach it. All right, so TaxJar, who we are. So I'll give you a little bit of, about our company, and then I'll talk a little bit later about our solution and what we could actually do for you. But we are the fastest US sales tax solution in the world. What we're doing is we're on a mission to make e-commerce easier for everyone. And the way we're going about doing that is solving sales tax. And we're not just solving it for merchants, we're solving this for developers, we're solving it for solutions like Zoe, we're solving it for everyone that has to deal with anything e-commerce. We're there and trying to provide a solution for that. So we're really excited to bring you this education to help you understand, make it easier for you to make a decision for your company on how you need to handle sales tax. And so that's a little bit about our company and what we're trying to do for folks. All right, so I'm going to start with Nexus and when to collect. So this is 101 content. This is what we really need to understand in order to move into the Wayfair decision. But if you're new to sales tax, you may have heard the word Nexus and what that actually means. So let's talk. there's no single governing body for sales tax. So if you're new to sales tax, you may think it's something that, the IRS or the federal government has something to do with. The answer is actually not that. Sales tax is managed at the state level. So there are 46 different states that collect sales tax. There's a few in there that don't have sales tax, which you'll see there in white. But if you're looking at the map on the right, the green states are the states that have sales tax. And because this is managed at the state level, it's pretty much chaos, especially from a merchant perspective when you think about having to comply in a number of different states and reading legislation and rules for each of these different states. It can be a little crazy. So each state is responsible for creating their own definition of nexus, which we'll get to in just a second. They're responsible for deciding which products are taxable and which ones that aren't. They're also responsible for determining what the rate is that you collect, and also due dates for each state. So whenever you comply in a state, you may have to file a tax return quarterly in Texas, but monthly in Colorado, and each of those due dates fall on different dates. So I'll break these down as we go through the content today, but just so you know, and just to kind of get everyone on the same page, there's a lot of different laws, and so this is why it's a little bit complicated and why most folks are a little bit scared when they hear about sales tax and what they need to know. So there's a lot out there. We're going to boil it down for you. So the biggest thing you have to think about when you're new to sales tax and you're starting to comply for your business is make sure you remember that sales tax should be a pass-through tax. It should be a tax that's paid from your customers to you that you hold and then remit to the state. So you're essentially a collection agent is what a lot of states refer to you as, because you're collecting this money on behalf of the state from your customers and then you're remitting it to them at the frequency at which they ask you to remit. So just remember, sales tax should not be something that is costing your business money in terms of paying out of pocket. You shouldn't be covering sales tax for your customers unless it's something you really want to do. It should be something that you really are only handling the remittance piece, and it's not really a profit driving piece of your business. So it's time spent on something that we love to automate. We love to help people not spend time on, because you're really just passing through the sales tax from one place to another. So the question of what is nexus, and sales tax nexus is this term that gets thrown around a lot. So we'll break this down for you in a few pieces. So when you collect sales tax in a state and when you need to comply, the short answer is when you have sales tax nexus in that state, you're required to comply with those laws. And so what does that actually mean? So nexus means that you have a significant presence or a connection to a state. And there's a lot of different ways that states have defined that. So here are some of the most popular ones here that you'll hear about. You can have economic nexus in a state, which means you're doing economic activity in that state, making sales. And if you pass a certain threshold, then you'll have economic nexus. You could have affiliate nexus, employee nexus, if you have an employee in the state, drop shipping, third party, inventory, warehouse, office. These are all the different things that the states have defined as you having a significant enough presence in that state to be able to comply and have to be responsible for the sales tax obligation in that state. So the most common things, I showed here a lot of different, affiliate nexus, etc. There's a lot of different things you need to think about, and I would recommend talking with a sales tax professional if you have a pretty complicated business. But for most e-commerce sellers, the two main things you need to think about and that affect most folks are the two kind of biggest categories we call physical nexus and economic nexus. So physical nexus is kind of what it sounds, or it can often be referred to as location nexus. This is the most basic thing that you really can't, it's really hard to argue with. So this is similar to if you ran a brick and mortar business. Your physical location of that business means that you are doing enough you have enough significant presence in that state to then need to collect sales tax and remit sales tax. So the things that can give physical nexus to your business would be having an office, including even if you work from home and it's a home office, having an office in a state gives you nexus in that state, having an employee in a state, having a warehouse, having an affiliate in a certain state, storing inventory. We'll talk about this in a second, but if you're using a third-party fulfillment service and you're storing inventory in a state, according to the laws in many states, that will give you nexus. And then also temporarily doing physical business in a state. So if you're doing a trade show or a craft fair, certain states define it differently, but those are the things you should think about in looking at your business and where you may have physical nexus in a state due to any one of those items above. The next one is called economic nexus, and this is a really, pretty new term for a lot of e-commerce sellers, given the legislation that's passed. And I'll define it here, and then I'll break it down in the next few slides. But economic nexus is really if you're making sales in terms of revenue or transactions. A lot of states will say if you're making over $200,000 shipping product into my state, you now have nexus. Or they may also say if you are shipping over 200 items or doing 200 transactions in a state, you now have economic nexus. So essentially just saying that you're doing enough economic activity in that state to warrant them requiring you to collect sales tax. So again, we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about Wayfair, but just breaking it down, these are the things that cause nexus. And again, nexus is basically, if you have nexus, you need to pay sales tax. If you don't have nexus, you don't need to pay sales tax to that state. So it's really important for folks when you're getting started with sales tax to figure out where you have nexus and where your requirements fall in terms of where you're going to collect. I highlighted the one under story and inventory under physical nexus because this is often a really surprising one for Amazon sellers. I know everybody on this call today is selling on Zoe, but in today's world, a lot of us are multi-channel. You're selling on Amazon in addition to any other marketplaces that are out there. So if you are selling on Amazon and if you are using FBA, the most common and kind of surprising thing that most folks learn when they get into sales tax is that the inventory storing your goods via Amazon's logistics service FBA will actually give you nexus in a number of states. And there's, I won't go too deep into this since we're really focusing on Zoe today, but I will point out that we have our sales tax blog and we have a category of Amazon which will tell you a whole lot of information about inventory nexus and FBA and how that applies to your business if you sell on Amazon. So I just put a screenshot here on the right. If you go to our blog, check out the drop down under Amazon and you'll be able to read more on it. So I just wanted to point that out though. It is a very common thing and probably the most surprising things that a lot of sellers learn whenever they're getting started with sales tax and sell multi-channel. All right. So now I'm going to get into, now that you've understood what nexus is and understand, you know, how that affects your business, let's talk about what happened with South Dakota and the Supreme Court ruling that affects all of this. So to give a really brief background, in about 2016, South Dakota decided to pass a law requiring any online seller to collect sales tax and essentially saying you have nexus in my state if you've made more than $100,000 in gross sales to customers in South Dakota or over 200 sales like units or transactions in a year to people in South Dakota. So again, this is not does your business make over $100,000. This is are you selling $100,000 more product into people in South Dakota. And South Dakota doesn't have a ton of people, so this doesn't affect a lot of retailers, but what it does affect is a lot of larger retailers. So what they did is they followed up this action by filing a lawsuit against a lot of big online retailers, namely Wayfair, Newegg, and a few other ones that were currently not collecting sales tax in South Dakota. So this was something that a lot of folks, if you've been following it, was, you know, passed through a lot of the courts. People were talking about it for a while, and finally, in the last couple of months, the Supreme Court came out with a ruling and ruled that this is actually legal for South Dakota to be able to require these businesses to collect sales tax, and essentially legalized the ability for a state to create economic nexus laws that are enforceable because of this ruling. So right now, there's still a lot of confusion because since South Dakota passed this law, a lot of other states had economic nexus laws kind of on the books that they weren't able to enforce. So now that this law is passed and the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of South Dakota, what it means is that there's a new type of nexus that is legally enforceable, and that's where economic nexus comes into play. So to kind of boil it down, what it did was it made economic nexus constitutional. So now you're able to, a state is able to compel you to comply in their state if you have what they've defined as economic nexus, which again, in South Dakota, I talked about earlier, was $100,000 or 200 transactions a year. The states that have come out with this have actually a lot of them have their own definitions of them. So again, we were talking about sales tax and how it's managed at the state level. We have 46 states in sales tax. There's only 23 of them right now that have defined economic nexus and when it applies to them. But I'm sure you'll see a lot more of them coming in. So this is a big change. This is kind of radically changing how businesses have to comply. If you're a large business and you're already compliant in all these states, this doesn't affect you. But if you're a smaller seller and you're actually hitting these thresholds, it can be a really challenging thing for you to now have to comply in multiple states, even if you had no physical presence. So essentially what this Supreme Court ruling is doing is saying it's not just physical presence, it's now economic nexus in addition. So you can have nexus in a state due to both of those things. And if you're interested in learning more about that, we have a bunch of content on our website breaking it down. We have videos. If you just go to TaxJar or go to our blog and type in South Dakota, you'll find it. But if you go to this link here, you'll be able to see all the content and information around what's going on with this, each of these states and then who's coming out with economic nexus laws, etc. So now that you understand what happened and what this ruling was about, I'll break it down a little bit into what you need to do and how this really affects you. So what should merchants do now? So these are kind of the 4 things. So we hear this question a lot, and this was a question that came up the most, the week that this ruling came out is, okay, now how does this affect me? What am I supposed to do? And so here are 4 things that I'd really recommend to really make sure that you kind of do a checkup on your own business and figure out what you need to do. So the first one is to know where you stand. So figuring out how many transactions and sales you have in every state will help you prepare for any new economic nexus laws or any ones that are currently being proposed or that are currently active. So using a tool, using Excel spreadsheets, however you want to do that, figure out how many sales and how many transactions you've made every state so that you have a benchmark for if these laws are affecting you. TaxJar has come out with a service that does this automatically for free, which I'll show you in the next slide. But any way you need to do that, whether it's downloading information from Zoe or if you sell multi-channel and combining all the information, that's the first thing, is know where you stand. The next thing is to stay updated. So as I mentioned, there's 23 states that have current economic nexus laws. I guarantee you that number will change in the next few weeks, the next few months. So make sure you lean on some kind of resource. If it's not going to be yourself, if you have time to do this, great. Most people don't. So subscribe to our blog, subscribe to anything out there that you think is legitimate that can help you stay in the know of what you need to know and figure out exactly what's going on with these new economic nexus laws and how they apply to your business. So I obviously recommend the TaxJar blog. We keep up with all of this information. We're a great resource. We try to boil everything down in very simple terms. So I recommend subscribing and making sure that you have someone or some service you can lean on to keep you updated. The next thing is don't wait around. So there is some discussion around, okay, maybe some of the marketplaces will collect for me, or maybe Congress will step in and do something. The real thing is don't take action, or take action for yourself. Don't wait around for other people to fix this for you. It's something that's, the cost of compliance is a lot less when you start and do it from scratch than if you wait and something happens later and you need to file taxes backwards and anything like that, back taxes. So we really recommend just taking action for yourself, knowing how this affects your business, and not waiting around for anything else to happen. And the other thing is to accept it and move forward. There's a lot of discussion around, sales tax previously for e-commerce merchants was something that a lot of them didn't need to deal with if they didn't have physical nexus, that we talked about. But now that the economic nexus laws are in place, if this affects you, we all need to understand that sales tax is now just a cost of doing business in e-commerce. So we had a little bit of an advantage as e-commerce sellers before because we didn't have to collect sales tax, and things may have been more attractive to customers. But at this point, the playing field is being leveled. Don't procrastinate. I recommend using TaxJar. We'll help you get back to business, get compliant, and move on. Sales tax is not something, unless you're like us and you're a nerd about sales tax and enjoy talking about it, it's not something you really want to spend time on because it's not profit driving for your business. So get back to growing your business. Let us handle sales tax, but I recommend not procrastinating on this and really figuring out all the information that you can. And we are going to show you ways to do that in the next few minutes. Okay, and if you are a TaxJar customer, what this means for you, a lot of folks are asking, what's your perspective on this? How does TaxJar look at, this ruling, because it's, a monumental ruling for us. There are a lot of unknowns, and we all know that. There's a lot of stuff that's going to change. Economic nexus, is being defined right now at a state level. We're ready, and we've kind of saw this coming, and we're ready there, and we're prepared. So we've already launched a tool, which I'll show you in the next slide, to be able to help you figure out where your sales and transactions lie, help you get all the information you need. But this isn't something that scares us. Sales tax has actually been changing for a number of years, and we've been keeping up with it. So we're ready, and we just want to tell everyone to just take a deep breath. Don't worry about this. Lean on a service like us. You choose a technology piece or decide to handle it yourself, and it's going to be okay. This isn't crazy town. We're going to continue to be the best resource for you in e-commerce. So part of this, as I mentioned before, is staying updated, making sure that you have all the information you need for your business to be compliant, and we're going to continue to do that. We have the #1 sales tax blog on the internet. We have thousands and thousands of readers every day, and we're going to make sure to be that resource for you. So that's not going to change. And we're easily adapting the change. So TaxJar, the way it is today, and the way it will be, as more of this economic nexus law comes out, we're going to change. We're going to adapt. We're quick to do that. Our technology is modern and robust, and we're able to do that. So to the last point, we're built for scale. This isn't something that worries us. We're excited that more people are learning about sales tax, and we're happy to be that resource for them. But this isn't something that you need to worry about or that should cause you any sleepless nights. We're going to provide you everything you need and continue to provide you everything you need to be able to handle it, manage it, and move on. All right, so as I mentioned, we launched a free service, Check Economic Nexus. We have the only automated tool out there that helps you do this. There's a lot of different ways you can do it with Excel, but we recommend just using this because, again, it's all about saving time and figuring out what you need to know to move on. So our TaxJar Sales and Transactions Checker is what you'll see here. If you go to the TaxJar website, you'll actually see that highlighted on the little banner that drops down. So you can find it on our website. You can also find it if you start a trial. But essentially what it does is you create a free trial of TaxJar. Again, no credit card required, just a free trial, and we'll import your data according to all the different sales tax economic nexus laws there are. So some laws require you to look back 12 months, some laws require you to look back at the current year, and we'll analyze all of your sales data for every channel that you've imported in the TaxJar, and we'll tell you exactly where you meet the economic thresholds for all of them that are currently available. And then we'll tell you next steps of how to register, how to comply, so you can make a decision on how you want to approach it. But it'll give you a really easy list out of exactly what states that you should be concerned about for your business. And it's free. Again, you can use it as many times as you want in a free trial for 30 days. Or if you're a TaxJar customer, it's always free, and you can continue to rerun that as your business changes or grows. So want to make sure you guys saw that. If you're wondering that next step of, okay, how do I figure this out? This is the answer. So I know there's probably going to be some questions about this. I'm happy to answer them at the end. I wanted to continue on with the Sales Tax 101 content. So now that you understand Nexus and you understand the changes to Nexus, I'm going to keep taking you guys through how you can understand sales tax if you're new to it and what you need to know. All right, so transitioning a little bit, what is taxable? So if you're new to sales tax, again, figuring out if the products that you sell are actually taxable or not is something that you need to figure out. If you sell online, there's a good chance that you're, first of all, shipping something. So shipping is something that is sometimes taxable. So that's why it's not as easy as just hard coding shipping is always taxable or shipping is not taxable into your website. You need to know which states it is and isn't taxable and which states do have sales tax, don't have sales tax. So the first question we get a lot is shipping taxable? And the answer is yes and no. So general guidelines, if you're thinking about what you're selling, services are mostly not taxable. The tides are changing there, but generally, if you're going to ballpark, this is where you can ballpark. Tangible items are usually taxable. So if you're selling something that is shipped in a box, generally that item is taxable. There are common exceptions around clothing and food. Again, each state has different exceptions in taxability, but to try to give you somewhere to just start your framework of what you're selling and how important this is to you. If you are selling services, I would definitely recommend looking deeper into digital goods and that kind of stuff to figure out how this applies to your business. But generally, this is how it falls. So, for example, the sales tax landscape is pretty crazy. So, I'll give you some examples of what things are taxable and what not. So, we'll play a little game of taxable and not. So charge sales tax. So if you sell a piano, so you're selling a piano, you're a piano store, you do charge sales tax on your piano. But if you give piano lessons, those are not taxable. So you don't charge sales tax because it is a service in this particular case. So let's look at a few other things. So tangible items. So things you can touch. This is a lamp, generally taxable. It's something you can ship in a box, you know, furniture, toothbrushes, etc. If you're selling products that are tangible, they're usually taxable. And then, as I mentioned, clothing. So this t-shirt. So if you're selling this t-shirt in Texas, it is taxable. If you're selling this t-shirt in New York and it's under a certain threshold, then it is not taxable. So if you're selling clothing, it's really important for you to, you know, get on top of your business, understand the taxability rules and where you're located and where you have nexus, because it's very different depending on where you're selling and shipping. All right, groceries. So food, sometimes taxable again, sometimes not. So this same exact box of Cheerios can be taxable in one state and not taxable in another, depending on if it, you know, how it's packaged, how it's positioned. Is it a prepared food? Is it not? So if you're selling groceries, that's another really interesting use case. And I already covered this shipping, sometimes taxable, sometimes not. And then we love this one. So it's just kind of a weird one. If you're in New York and you sell a bagel that looks like this, you are not required to charge your customer sales tax. So on a whole bagel, you do not charge sales tax. However, once you slice that bagel in half, it becomes taxable. So just because your bagel went from being not sliced to slice, the state in New York views that as being prepared from a grocery item that is not taxable to now a prepared food. So it's very weird, pretty crazy, but this is how complicated sales tax can be. So it's really important for you to figure out exactly how it applies to your business. But we always like the idea of saving a few bucks on sales tax. So buy your bagels whole in New York. Just kidding. All right, and then lastly, digital goods. Digital goods can sometimes be taxable, sometimes not. Depends on which type of digital goods you're selling, where you're located. So if you are selling digital goods, we recommend talking with a professional or looking deeper into digital good laws. All right. Okay, so now you understand nexus. You understand, okay, nexus means that I have to collect sales tax in a state. Then next you said, okay, these are my products and I need to collect sales tax on these products. Say you're selling tangible goods and you realize that. The next question we get from a lot of sellers is, where do you collect sales tax? So this is where it gets pretty simple. And this is where a lot of folks come to us and say, do I need to collect sales tax in every single state? First of all, the answer is no, there isn't sales tax in every single state. But also, it's up to your business to determine where you have nexus first, so then you can determine where you should charge sales tax. So the golden rule of sales tax is that you collect sales tax when the item sold is shipped to a state where you have nexus. So I'm going to break that down for you in a few examples, but just read that again. You're only on the hook for collecting the remaining sales tax when an item is shipped to a state where you have nexus. All right, so if you're shipping an item in your home state, so say you're in Akron, Ohio, and you're shipping an item to Lakewood, Ohio, because you have a physical business in your home state of being in Ohio, you now have to collect sales tax on that purchase that was shipped to a city in Ohio. So it's shipped to a state where you have nexus, and you have nexus because it is your home state and you have an office there or a retail business. So that's the simplest thing right here. All right. So if you're running this business where you only have nexus in that one home state of Akron, Ohio, if you ship to a state where you don't have nexus, you're not on the hook for sales tax. So if you ship it over to Massachusetts, no problem. No sales tax should be collected on that purchase because you don't have nexus in that state. So even though you do have nexus in Ohio, the item was shipped to Massachusetts and you have no nexus in Massachusetts. All right, so say your business expands, you now start using Amazon FBA, you now realize that your inventory is being stored in 5 states, and then with your home state, you now have nexus in 6 states. And if you're going to comply in all 6 states, you need to collect sales tax if your items are shipped to any of those 6 states. So we have the states where your inventory is being stored due to Amazon, which you can figure out if you just go to our blog and take a look at some of our articles. Amazon will show you where your inventory is being stored, and also using TaxJar will show you that automatically. So you'll know that information and you'll say, okay, if I'm shipping a product to any of these states now, I need to collect and remit sales tax on that purchase because I now have inventory nexus due to those 6 states. And again, even if you still have inventory nexus in those states, and that's, you have those 6 states where your business is, has nexus. If you ship to a remote state, say again you ship to Massachusetts, you do not collect sales tax. So you only need to collect sales tax on the purchases that are shipped to states where your business has nexus. Got it? Okay, I'll keep going. So we're getting close to the end. So I know this is a lot, but we're getting close. So when should you start registering? So this is the next question. So now you've figured out that you have nexus in a state, that you should collect on the items that you're selling. Now you know which transactions you need to charge on those items that you're selling. The next question is, okay, so when should I start registering and when should I start collecting? How do you get started in that piece? So there's a few steps to compliance that we recommend. So it really depends on your tolerance for how much you can take on at a certain point in your business. I know everyone's probably gearing up for Q4 and the holidays at this point since it's the summer, but the first thing is to make sure you're compliant in your home state. So what you do is register for a sales tax license, enable sales tax collection. So we'll show you how to do that with Zoe in a little bit. But if you're doing it on any other carts like Amazon, etc., you need to enable your sales tax collection across every cart you sell. And then you file and pay when the due date rolls around. So we can help with all of this. Once you have started to realize that you have nexus in more states, if your business does, then we recommend branching out to those new states and starting to register. If you have a history there, so if you've been selling in a certain state with nexus and you haven't been complying, we can help you with that. We can connect you with folks that can help you with a voluntary disclosure. But it's time to take a look at where your business has nexus and where you want to comply. So start branching out to new states, but make sure that you've first registered in your home state. And the other thing to recommend or to remember is that nexus is not channel specific. So if you have, say you have Amazon FBA and that's giving you nexus in 5 states, if you're also selling on eBay and you're also selling on Zoe, you need to make sure you collect sales tax in all of those carts for the same states. So if you have nexus, if you have inventory stored in Texas, for example, and you have nexus there, Texas wants to know how much sales tax you're collecting and giving them for everything your business sells, not just what your business sells via a specific channel. So that's something that is a common thing people don't understand about nexus, is that it's not just channel specific. A specific channel can give you nexus, but it's really the entire business that has nexus, not just a specific channel. All right, so when should you go ahead and register? So this is where this comes down to your tolerance. You need to use this as your guide. So obviously you've been probably hearing a lot about South Dakota and what's going on with the Supreme Court, and essentially the reason why this is a hot topic right now and why this even came to the Supreme Court is that states are getting smarter and states are getting hungrier. A lot of commerce is going on with e-commerce, as you guys all know and participate in, and the states are seeing lost revenue from not collecting sales tax on e-commerce purchases given the current nexus laws, and so they're getting hungrier and really wanting a piece of the pie. So as that's growing, it's up to you to decide the law states specifically that you need to collect sales tax in these scenarios, but the piece that we recommend is to think about materiality in your business. So if you are selling goods to a certain state that you have Amazon nexus due to FBA, for example. I keep coming back to this example, but it's an easy one. So say you have inventory stored in, Connecticut, and you've only sold one thing in that state, and your tax bill would be maybe $3. Technically, you should go register and remit and give Connecticut that $3. But what we recommend is to kind of take the common sense approach and say, okay, if this ended up, Connecticut came after me for that $3, is this material to me? Would a sales tax bill, be material to your business? Would it put you out of business? Would it really have an effect on your business? So we're not recommending that you don't comply in states where you have nexus. You definitely should. But as a business owner and as an e-commerce owner ourselves, we understand that at a certain point, you need to figure out what that threshold is. And it may be 0, but what that threshold is for you to comply and it's worth your time. Because, sales tax management there is a time commitment there, especially if you're doing it on your own and not using a service like TaxJar. So by registering, you protect your business from any kind of, liability and risk. But if you only owe a few bucks in a state, maybe it's worth it for you to wait a little longer until your sales grow, especially if you're a brand new seller. But it's totally up to you to make that decision for your business on where your risk tolerance lies and where your liability is. All right, so the next question folks ask is, how do I know how much to charge for sales tax? And this is where a solution like TaxJar is really, really helpful. But I'm going to walk you through a few of the basics, and so you can make the right decision on where you live and how much you charge and figuring that out. So what makes up a sales tax rate? So it's usually a sum of all applicable rates that typically could be the state rate, the local rate, there may be education, municipal district, a lot of different rates. So if you Google, what is the rate in Centennial, Colorado, you'll see it's 6.75, but what that number is a combination of a bunch of different rates. And so the reason it's important to understand that is because all of these people, or all of these kind of areas underneath that rate, are wanting their percentage of sales tax. So whenever that 6.75 gets collected, it doesn't just go straight to the state. It gets broken down into all these different areas. And so whenever you're looking at, how much sales tax do you collect, the basic definition is you only collect the sales tax where the item is shipped to. So if you live in Texas, for example, you look at the state rate if I'm selling a goods or a product to Texas. So the state where the item is shipped to determines your rate. And when you're looking at what type of state that is, that's where things get a little bit tricky. So there's two different types of states, or there are two different types of, there are two main different types of ways that you collect sales tax in a state. So certain states are categorized as origin-based states. So Texas, that's where I am, that's where I'm biased to always using Texas in my examples. Texas is an origin-based state, and what they say in Texas is you're going to charge the rate based on the seller's location. So there's one rate for the entire state. Destination-based states are where the tax rate actually varies. So if you are in Houston and you ship, or if you're in Boulder, Colorado, and you ship to somewhere else in Colorado, then you actually charge the rate of where it's shipped to. So when you're looking at which state to collect, you always look at where it's shipped to, but when you're looking at what you're going to collect, you need to figure out if it's an origin or destination-based state. This really only applies for your home state and where your kind of business is located. If you're a remote seller, so if you have remote like economic nexus in a certain state or something where you're not based in that state, you're considered a remote seller and you're always destination-based. So this right here is really only applicable for determining your home state and how you should collect in your home state. But if you have remote nexus due to a lot of the different things we've discussed, then you're always going to be destination-based. So it's really tricky because there's no way to know ahead of time, unless you've coded every single rate in all of Colorado into your shopping cart. It's really impossible for you to know how much sales tax you're going to collect at the point of sale if you're doing it on your own and not using some kind of service to help you with that. It's not just, I'm going to charge this one rate because I live here. If you have nexus in multiple states and you're interacting in destination-based states, then it gets really, really complicated to figure out how much you should collect. All right, so I'm going to give you guys an example of an origin state and a destination-based state and how you would collect. So if you had, if you were shipping an item to Archer City, Texas, and you're located in Irving, that's where your store is, so you're shipping that good within the state, so it's shipped to Texas, so I need to figure out, okay, what's the Texas rate I need to collect? Because Texas is an origin state, you're going to look at the Irving sales tax rate. So that's the state rate, the county, etc. So you're not going to look up what is the Archer City rate, you're going to look up what is Irving City rate, because origin-based Texas, so the total sales tax collected on this purchase would be 8.25%. Now, if you were in a destination state, like New York, for example, if you have this business, you're selling goods out of Stamford, and you're shipping something to Buffalo, New York, you need to charge the destination sales tax rate of Buffalo, New York. So instead of charging the sales tax rate for Stamford, you charge the sales tax rate for Buffalo. So that's the state rate plus Erie County, et cetera, and it's about 8 and 7.75%. So this is how it works with destination-based states. Destination-based states are a lot more of a headache than origin-based states. But again, remember that you're collecting on a destination level if you're a remote seller. So even states that are origin, if you have a remote nexus in them, you're going to be collecting on the destination method. So things can get a little bit tricky. So now you determined what you actually need to charge folks. The last step is to actually file and remit them to the state. So how do you manage the filing and due dates, and how does this kind of all work? So when you register for a sales tax permit, they will assign you a specific filing frequency. So they'll tell you, okay, you know, Lizzie, for your business, you're going to file monthly, and it's, you know, here's the calendar. So it's going to be in Texas, we file on the 20th of the month. If you also have nexus in California, for example, California may say, hey, Lizzie, your business is going to file semi-annually, and it's going to be in June. If I'm filing in multiple states, this can get a little bit crazy. So it's really something where you need to have a calendar to organize yourself and make sure that you can understand what due dates you have every month, because they're different. Again, because this is state run, there's no, you know, it's not like an April 15th, everyone does income tax. With sales tax, it's usually between the 15th and 31st of every month. And you really have to just register with the state and figure out where you fall. Typically, the state will require larger sellers to file more often because they want that sales tax revenue. If you're a larger seller, you may be in the monthly or quarterly bracket. If you're a smaller seller, they may be okay waiting annually for you. But they will assign it to you. You cannot choose. And if you want to request a different filing frequency, generally, based on your sales in the first calendar year, they will reassess in January. So you can make requests to state to say, hey, I'm not selling very much. Can I be annually instead of quarterly? So generally, you need to have a year before they'll do that. But it's something to think about based on your sales to try and help you manage it. All right, so the typical filing scenario. So if you're filing in multiple states, here's what I talked about. Say we're filing returns in 3 states. So if you're monthly in one state, then every single month for that one state on the 20th, you need to see your filing, or you need to remit your filing to the state. So if you're quarterly in another one, then every 3 months you need to file your return in that state. And then annually in the 3rd month, you may only need to file once a month. The most important thing here is that you need to keep track of it and be organized in order to avoid late penalties. So even if you have no sales in a state and you need to file a $0 return, in a number of states, there's actually a penalty for not filing that $0 return. So it's really important to keep track of this so that you don't have to have any late penalties or late fees, and you are good to go. Again, I'm going to show you how TaxJar can manage all this for you, but I'm just breaking it down for you so you understand what you're looking at in terms of managing sales tax on your own. All right, and then the piece of remitting to the state. So what do you actually do in order to remit to the state? So here is where TaxJar service helps the most, but what you need to do is, it's all about your sales data. So you need to get your sales data from Zoe and eBay and anywhere else you sell and put it all together. Because again, the state doesn't care about channel specific sales. The state cares about the total sales for the state. So if you're a multi-channel seller, you need to bring that all back and kind of gather it all in one spot. Then you need to determine how much you collected. And if you haven't been collecting, say you only started collecting, in the middle of the month, or maybe your cart was set up wrong, you need to figure out if you collected the right amount, which TaxJar can help you do, and make sure that's the right amount before you file. So make sure the state is getting what they're expecting that you give them. And then you just need to get all your data into the required format to file. So I'll show you an example on the next slide, but most of the states, every state is different in how they file, and usually they have an e-file option, so you can do it online. But each state asks you for this information in a specific format. So for example, in California, they want you to break down the sales tax collected by the city's, county's jurisdiction. All of that piece that I went over earlier of what goes into a sales tax rate, they want you to break that all down when you report it back to them. It's not like you can just give them the money and they'll figure out where it goes. You have to tell them where it's going to go. There's other states that are a little bit easier where you can just tell them that lump sum and they'll deal with it. A lot of the states that most sellers have the biggest headache with are the bigger states that do require you to break it down. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So if you're filing in California, for example, if you're filing out of state and as a remote seller, they'll ask you to break this down. It's typically called a Schedule B. And what they'll ask you to do is break down, okay, how much did you sell in Alameda County, Alpine, Armador, all these different places? how much was collected, and then the local tax will be automatically applied. So it'll, when you fill it out, it'll fill it out on the right. So if you are doing this, and depending on how big your sales are and how many counties, et cetera, you've shipped to, in a place like California where a lot of e-commerce is really, highly active, you may have hundreds of these counties or hundreds of these districts, et cetera. So TaxJar provides all of that information automated. So we pull in all of your data from Zoe and anywhere else you sell, give you this report exactly how it shows on the left. So it tells you exactly what you need to write for Alameda, and gives you that breakdown so you can copy and paste it over. We also offer an automated filing service, which I'll tell you, where you can skip this entire process. But just giving you a quick glance, if you've never filed a sales tax return, every state is going to be different, but these are some of the headache states, like California, that it can take you 3, 4, 5 hours to fill out. And if you're a monthly seller, that's a significant drain on your business, because those are hours you could be spending doing other things for your business. All right, so common challenges, I mentioned a few of these already, but things to remember when you're getting started with collecting. The most common kind of pitfalls people fall into is not collecting on every channel. So folks that, they have everything set up right in Amazon, but they don't have it set up on eBay and they don't have it set up on Zoe. Not collecting accurately across channels. So it's really important to make sure, as I mentioned in those filing steps, to make sure and look at how much you should have collected, to make sure, hey, did you actually accidentally set up the wrong rate in a certain channel, and have you automatically been, based on that, collecting the wrong amount? If you're using things like zip rates, if you're manually putting those yourself, there's a good chance you could have made an error on those. So it's just important to figure it out. And the last one is just not keeping up with filing. So you can get into, a real stressful situation if you're filing in a number of different states and you don't have time to actually complete the filings, because then you'll rack up late fees and penalties, and nobody likes late fees and penalties. So those are some common challenges. I don't want to scare anyone by this at all. I'm just trying to give you the lay of the land with how it works out. So when you're getting involved in sales tax and you're starting to collect, just keep these things in mind so that okay, this is how much time I'm going to need to dedicate to this, and this is how much, these are kind of the common things that I can do from the start so that I don't run into these issues later on. And then I'll talk a little about TaxJar and essentially how we can automate everything for you. So I know this has been a lot of content. What we want to do is help you understand how sales tax works, so then you can understand what we do. It's often really confusing to figure out what TaxJar will do for you if you've never collected sales tax or understand what sales tax is. But I want to let you know that just take a deep breath at this point. We will automate everything for you, and you don't actually have to do all those things that we described that were the manual things. So I'm going to check in real quick. How are you feeling? We've gone through a ton of content. We're almost at the very end. If you're feeling like this, it's okay. This is pretty much how every TaxJar customer feels. They want sales tax to go away. So with all the stuff that's going on with Wayfair and South Dakota, we know sales tax is not going away, but we get it. We know you want it to go away. So we're going to do everything we can to help you have that experience if that's what you choose to do. So the first option is not a great option, and it's really not an option at all. It's just put your head in the sand and pretend that sales tax doesn't exist. It's totally up to you and how you want to approach your business, but we really don't recommend that, just because you can get yourself into a bigger hole than the hole that you're shoving your head into in the sand. It's really, sales tax is it's part of the e-commerce business, part of the kind of requirements of running a business, and so we don't recommend putting your head in the sand and pretending it doesn't exist, because it will catch up to you. The good news is it can just take you a few minutes to get set up with TaxJar, and we'll show you about that. Instead of feeling like this, we want you to feel like this. We want you to feel like, hey, this was easy. You made it simple. I got it all going, and now I don't have to worry about it. So the hardest part is getting started. So you're at that start line right now. I'm going to show you. You'll get there. It's really easy to be able to take this from a really daunting, crazy, scary place to something that's so easy and can be completely automated. So I'll show you a little bit about what our services do and how we can help Zoe merchants. So what will we do for your business? So we'll centralize all of your sales tax in a single dashboard. So if you are multi-channel, as I talked about before, if you're selling on marketplaces in addition to Zoe, we'll bring all of that information together. So if you're filing sales tax right now, doing it with Excel, all of that basically goes away, and you don't have to export anything. We automatically connect to your marketplaces and give you a really nice single dashboard of everything you need to know sales tax. So we provide automated remittance as well. So as we talked about, when you're having to file those returns where you're breaking it down by city, county, jurisdiction, super not fun. What we offer is auto file, which enables you to just say, hey, TaxJar, file this for me, and you guys know when the due date is, and it's all taken care of. So with TaxJar, we will send you due date reminders if you're filing manually, just so you can have that reminder to say, hey, FYI, you have that filing coming up in Tennessee this month. But if you use auto file, we know exactly when those due dates are, and we will just automatically file your return on time every time. And we'll send you an email before any of those filings just to say, hey, heads up, here's what's happening. We file not only your return, but we'll also file your payment. So we'll give you a heads up to make sure your bank account has enough funds to be able to pay the state. We provide real sales tax calculations during checkout with our API. So this is something you don't really need to worry about because you guys are leading on Zoe, and we have an integration with Zoe, but that's just another service that we provide. And so in general, what we do is, if you think about autopilot, that's what we like to talk about, is TaxJar can help you put your sales tax on autopilot. So we only have a few more minutes, so I'll just quickly run through how it works. So if you're interested in trying out TaxJar with a free 30-day trial, you can find us in the Zoe App Store. And if you follow the link here, this will be recorded in the webinar. This will give you the support docs to know exactly the guided setup. It will sync your orders with TaxJars for our automated reporting and filing. We'll automatically import and refresh your rates each month, so you'll always be calculating the right amount, so you don't need to worry about putting any kind of tax rates into Zoe in the settings. We'll do all that for you. And so here's an example. So what we do is you can also, once you've connected with Zoe, you can connect to any other place you sell if you have any other shopping carts or PayPal, etc. We have pre-built integrations just like the one with Zoe. And so if you're selling multi-channel, it's going to be done right and automatically. We'll give you a centralized dashboard to talk about with state-specific summaries. So we'll tell you exactly what you're filing or what you owe and what you should owe in case you, again, have a sales tax issue with some of your cards or collecting the wrong amount. We'll tell you exactly what you should be collecting. And then we'll show you the preview of your return. So you'll say, okay, here's exactly everything that you're going to be filing. So we'll show you the sales exemptions, how much you collected, all of that information, break it down by the county, city, jurisdiction, all again, automatically, and combining all of it from any other channel you sell on as well. And then you'll have the opportunity to look at your dashboard and choose where you want to enroll in autofile. We offer autofile in every single state in the US. So you enroll once, then you never miss a due date again. Even if you have a $0 filing, we'll file it for you, no problem. We've remitted tens of millions of transactions through autofile, and our accuracy is guaranteed. So if there's anything that happens, we stand behind it, and we'll help you talk with the state as well if you ever have issues on something that we filed for you. Oops. And I also just wanted to recommend the Sales and Transactions Checker. So this is, again, a tool that lets you find out where you have economic nexus. When you start a TaxJar trial, on your dashboard, we'll tell you where you have physical nexus. And this will tell you that second piece of economic nexus. You know exactly for your business which states you need to be concerned about and how much revenue you have in those states. And if you just quick things, I'm really proud to work at TaxJar, and why you should choose TaxJar is that, number one, customers love us. We're really easy, approachable, great to work with, I like to say. We have more than 10,000 businesses that we support, and we're growing every day. So we're the highest reviewed sales tax solution anywhere. So if you're wondering what people think of us, just check out our reviews. If you go to taxjar.com/reviews, you can see a link to all of those third-party review sites. We're built for modern multi-channel e-commerce. So this goes back to the piece of, when South Dakota, when Wayfair happens, it's no big deal. Our software is all built in-house and really modern, so we're able to change and adapt any way we need to be. We also just combine all your sales tax information quickly and easily. There's no CSV downloads, boring stuff like that. So everything is automated and first class in terms of technology. And then lastly, a lot of folks love our human support. So we like to call it truly human. We answer emails within hours, not days. We're here to help you depending on different plans that we have. Our support levels scale. If you're on a basic plan, it's email support, but it's really great email support. And then if you choose some of our TaxJar Plus plans, which I'll talk about, you can have a specific team and onboarding team to help you get started depending on what the size and shape of your business is. So again, if you're in good company, here's some of the brands that we work with and support. So we just, we love working with all of our customers, and we really value them and are thankful to have such great brands that are trusting us with their sales tax. And then again, our reviews. So here you can see we're the highest rated sales tax solution across all of the different channels. So we'd love for you to take a look and see what other folks think. A few resources. So these are completely free resources that we manage, and we'd love for you to engage with. So our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TaxJar. We have a bunch of videos. We always try to make videos to explain the stuff because everyone knows reading sales tax legislation is not fun. We also have a sales tax community on Facebook with over 9,000 folks. There's a lot of tax pros and CPAs in there that can help you get information, and so feel free to engage there, ask any questions you have. And then lastly, our blog. So it's the most popular sales tax blog on the internet. We have hundreds of thousands of visitors, and we try to break down anything that's relevant to e-commerce and to sales tax. So you can find that there. And lastly, if you're wondering, this is our pricing. So we have two different types of plans. We have TaxJar Basic and TaxJar Plus. TaxJar Basic is pretty much like a pay-as-you-go self-service option. So this is where we have email-only support, but our plans start at $17 a month for an annual plan, and they scale based on the number of transactions that your business does. So you'll see it if you go to our website. So it's a pretty economic way to be able to manage sales tax. You get the dashboards, you get the ability to auto-file. If you're a larger business that's looking for more account management, archival support, dedicated go live, we have that option with TaxJar Plus, and we'd love to talk to you about that. So our sales team is always excited to give you guys a demo of TaxJar Plus. So, but we do have both options depending on what type of business you run. We're able to help you with your sales tax, no matter what. So as I mentioned, TaxJar Basic, it's for single users, small e-commerce sellers, folks that are selling on Amazon. If you just sell, a few things on Zoe, you can take advantage of a lot of the stuff we have. And then we recommend TaxJar Plus for larger brands or marketplaces or solution partners. If you're looking for more support, a few more features, bulk discounting, etc., we have really good technical onboarding as well. And I would recommend reaching out for TaxJar Plus. All right, and that took a little bit of a long time, but I want to see if there's any questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have questions after this webinar, or if you're watching a recording, feel free to email support@taxjar.com, and we'll get back to you ASAP.
Awesome.
All right, Josh.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, first off, for that presentation. Quite a lot of great information in there. Those of you who were with us last year may remember some of this, but obviously this continues to be an evolving thing. There's two things I wanted to mention that Lizzie didn't that I just think are helpful for those who aren't as familiar with TaxJar. If you have the TaxJar app and you're subscribed to TaxJar, and when these changes come down the pike, it automatically pushes to Zoe, and that's an important thing to note. This is not something where you need to be keeping on top of it and doing things manually. Once you're configured and TaxJar has the data available, it's much easier for everything to kind of flow smoothly. So you're not going into Zoe settings and constantly changing tax settings or anything like that. So that's one thing that I think really is a big selling point for TaxJar in terms of your time. The second thing, and this is something that many people don't always realize, is that about half the states potentially offer some discounts if you file by a certain date, because as Lizzie said, these states are hungry for money in terms of being able to make sure that they're getting the tax revenues in to provide the services that they promise their residents. And so they will sometimes bribe the merchants a little bit to get that money in faster, and TaxJar is aware of those scenarios, knows if you're qualified for them, and if you're using autofile, for instance, can help you get them, which may even help offset the cost of using autofile to begin with. So it's just nice little extras that kind of pop up as you get deeper into this, and this is all just part of the solution here. With that said, we definitely want to take any questions if you have them right now. I know this is one of those topics where these questions might not be immediate, so we certainly understand if we don't get many questions right away. But if you do have a question, again, use the questions feature inside the chat to be able to submit your questions for the Q&A, and we'll review those now. And if you don't have questions now but have them later, as you saw, you can contact Lizzie or you can email me, and I'll also forward them on your behalf. And it looks like we've got a little something flowing through. So a question that came up is, what counts as an affiliate? Would web affiliates using click-throughs count in terms of Nexus? I think is the question.
Yeah, so click-through Nexus is a term that I would recommend for your business looking into, since you're asking about this. Each state defines affiliate and defines click-through Nexus as differently. because each state has their own set of laws around it. So what I would recommend for you is to reach out or start searching around click-through nexus and see if the states that you're selling in, the states that your business is operating in, have some documentation around that. But yes,
But
with
if I
affiliates.
recall correctly, this definitely has been an issue in the past, just using Amazon and their affiliate program as a guide, because many states started putting these laws into place to try to collect money on sales that Amazon affiliates were pushing, and they actually pulled out of states for a while because they were trying to avoid that sales tax nexus problem, because these states were sort of passing these laws. So it's definitely out there. It's worth looking into.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Another question for you, Lizzie. When it comes to TaxJar, you mentioned sort of multi-channel. Let's just start with just the Zoe aspect of it. If they're signing up for a new account and going for Zoe, what are the basic things that they should know in terms of being prepared to come to you with in terms of getting everything set up?
Yeah, that's a great question. We hear that a lot. So the things you need to figure out, as I mentioned in the presentation, is really figuring out where your business has nexus. So before you come to us, it's usually really helpful to know where you have nexus, so where you're interested in collecting sales tax. If you need help getting registered, just know which states that you want to get registered in. We have a service. If you go to taxjar.com/help me, we will help you register in any states that you need registration help in. But that's the first thing, is knowing, are you registered in a certain state? Are you about to register? Or are you currently collecting? And then, the next thing is to just determine how much you want to automate. So TaxJar offers different solutions. As I mentioned, the auto file solution. We also offer a solution that's just our basic plan without auto file, that allows you to just copy and paste our information from our reports over to you. So really kind of think about what you're looking for in terms of how much automation you need and what's right for your business. And that will help you kind of get started quicker and have the right expectations around what you're looking for with TaxJar. So yeah, other than that, really just knowing where you're selling, where your nexus is, and what stage in the process of registration is most helpful. So TaxJar as a solution, we have we're able to help you with registrations and that kind of stuff, but our software is most helpful for folks that are already registered and ready and already collecting. But we'll help you get to that point.
And then let's flip the script. So now let's assume that they're already a customer or they're already collecting sales tax. How often is it recommended? And I'm sure this varies based on the volume of the business. I'm sure the higher the volume, the more often you should be looking at this. But initially, how often should merchants be sort of reviewing their nexus and making sure that they're keeping up to date with where they should be collecting?
Yeah, I think it definitely, to your point, ties with growth. So it depends on, how fast you're growing. TaxJar keeps up with all of it automatically. So if you're using TaxJar, anytime you want to log in, if you're super concerned about it, you can log in daily. Anytime you have a new nexus, it will pop up on your dashboard. So you can look at it as often as you want. But I would probably recommend folks just take a look at it monthly, depending on your growth, though. You may want to look at it.
So that's a good point. So actually, I'm not sure we mentioned that during the presentation, so let's highlight that for a second. So if you're a TaxJar customer, it'll actually flag when Nexus is now sort of being established in a new state based on the laws that are changing that we were talking about, based on any other sort of rules that they may or may not know about. So it actually helps you from that perspective too.
Yeah, so just to clarify that too, right now your dashboard will show the physical Nexus location. So if you, for example, start selling products in a different city, or if you're shipping to a place that you have inventory stored in, if we see that happening with Amazon or another cart provider that you're using for inventory management, if we see that, you'll notice that and it'll show up on your dashboard. Currently, we don't have notifications in place for economic nexus, so if you cross the threshold for economic nexus, but that's on our roadmap, so you should be. But in the meantime, instead of having that notification, you can go into your TaxJar account and just run the nexus checker. So you're able to see that information. We just haven't built the notifications piece, but that's coming soon.
Got it. So it's a manual click instead of an auto pop-up, but there's still a way to verify.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can be able to look at that anytime. And I just want to also just reiterate that tool is completely free. It does require you to start a free trial, but there's no credit card or anything like that. That's something it's actually a lot of development that we put into creating this tool, and we wanted to make it free because we wanted to make it accessible for everyone that's trying to figure this out. So if you haven't taken a look at it, feel free to, even if you're not going to use TaxJar, use that tool, figure out what's, important for your business rather than trying to deal with Excel spreadsheets and figuring that all out. Just use it as a time saver. And then if you want to use TaxJar, you're already there and have everything connected. But, please take a look at that tool if you're having questions about economic nexus.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially as the laws continue to evolve, because other states are now going to be reviewing this decision and what that means for their own laws. I'm sure that that tool will get updated with the latest rulings and changes and law updates as states sort of find their footing with this, as with anything else when it comes to taxes. And I'm sure it'll all be surprises and last minute changes that people need to keep up with.
Yep. Definitely. And our blog keeps up with all of that as well. So even if you're not using TaxJar or not using our transactions tracker, if you subscribe to our blog, we have all of the information. We have actually a specific blog page for every single state that has economic nexus. It tells you when it goes into effect, if it already did, or if it's planned for 2019, et cetera. So you can read all of that and just figure out everything you need to know.
Absolutely. I think that covers all the questions we have at the moment. Before we get into the sort of the wrap up, I do want to mention that TaxJar is one of Zoe's certified apps, so you can find it in the App Store. It's a one-click install. There's no cost to install the app itself, so when you get your trial, you can set things up and test things out right away. So just keep that in mind. And TaxJar has been working with Zoe since basically the beginning. I think TaxJar was one of Zoe's first partners. So, they've been growing by leaps and bounds, and they're doing great work. So at the very minimum, I encourage everybody to check out their blog, subscribe to it, keep up with the information that's being shared there, because it's just a really helpful resource for everybody. So with that said, I do want to thank Lizzie for joining us today. I'd like to remind all of you that you can share your feedback about the webinar. We'd like to hear what you thought and other topics that you'd like us to discuss. Please email me at josh@zoe.com. And if you're watching the recording and have questions, you can send the questions to either Lizzie or myself, and we'll get back to you with some answers. We want to also remind you that we are not done. This is part of a series that continues forever and ever, as long as I'm here anyway. So keep the Merchant Webinars page front of mind as well, zoe.com/webinars. We have recordings of our previous webinars too. 20 plus recordings at this point on a variety of topics, from marketing to sales tax, as you see here, to just best practices for running an e-commerce store. We've also got those recordings on YouTube, and this recording will filter its way out there for those watching live very soon, so you can watch it back as well if you want to review any information. And that said, thank you again for Lizzie for joining us. Thank you to all of you who joined us for this presentation, and we hope to see you next time during our webinar series.
Thanks so much for having us, Josh. Appreciate all you guys for listening. If you're on the recording, appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.